let's talk more about the Orioles. He was out there on the West Coast talking about an interesting sort of anniversary that was marked over the weekend. He covers the Orioles for the Baltimore Sun. He's our friend Jacob Calvin Meyer, and he's back with us now here on GCR. Jacob, it's Glenn. It's good to chat with you. Appreciate you taking the time for us as always, sir.
Yeah, thank you for having me on.
I was really interested in what you wrote this weekend, Jacob, because I hadn't thought about sort of the 2-year marker of they just bludgeoned the Yankees. Everything was coming up Orioles. They had new ownership. They had gone out and gotten it. Like everything was going the right way. And I don't know, maybe these last 2 days will prove to be something, but I'm not ready to go there just yet. It really is amazing that this is where they find themselves 2 years removed from being kind of the kings of the baseball world.
Yeah, I I think about that game in New York, that series in New York in June 2024, which, if you remember, followed a really fun home series with a big win on, I believe, Father's Day against the Phillies before that series. And it just felt like the Orioles were on top of the world. And that after the way 2023 went, aside from the playoffs and the way the 24 had started, that this was going to plan, right? That this rebuild had fully worked, and that there would be a consistent winner in Baltimore. And then, obviously, as Mike Elias later pointed out, after he fired Brandon Hyde in May 2025, he sort of referenced June 2024 as the moment where he said, quote, we were on top of the baseball world in every facet, is what he said. Again, at the time in June 2024, they had the best farm system in baseball too. And, we don't have to relitigate the way that the 24 season ended and what happened last season and even what's happened so far this year. But I think I had somebody, after I posted that story, somebody asked me kind of like, what the hell happened here? Like, how do you wrap your head around it? And I think there's probably four main buckets that I would put it in, right? Like, there's probably 1,000 different reasons, and not one of them would be a majority. I think, they're all making up a small percentage of this, but I think one big one is regression. I think if we're going to be honest with ourselves, the 2023, the 22, 23, and even the 24 teams were probably not as good as we thought they were. And frankly, the Pythagorean record, the base runs record, kind of proved that out. And now we're sort of seeing maybe a little bit of a bounce back of that. There have been several front office decisions that have gone wrong in the time since June 2024. Charlie Morton, Gary Sanchez, Tyler O'Neill. There have been a lot of injuries, right? The 23 team didn't deal with any injuries at all. And June 24 is when the team started dealing with injuries. Bradish went down, Kula went down. July is when Westbrook went down, Mountcastle went down. And so there have been a lot of injuries since then. That's a big part of this. And then, frankly, over the past 2 years is when we started to see underperformance from the young core. I don't think you can say that any member of the young core outside of Basayo and Beavers, who weren't in the majors yet at that time, have a higher stock today than they did in June 2024. And so it's hard for me to wrap my head around it, but when I do it that way, when I try to put it in buckets, it sort of makes a little bit more sense when I do it that way.
No, I think all four of those check out. I think the follow-up that's interesting to me, Jacob, is that group still there? Like, is the spirit of the 2024 Orioles still attainable somehow from this group, or is it dead? And I don't know, again, that they had two good wins in LA this weekend, right? So I guess the vibes are slightly higher today. But when everybody keeps saying, like, can they play better? Yeah, they can play better because we know that their parts are better than the whole has been. But is the spirit of that still attainable for this core group as constructed, or does it just sort of work this way that, like, once you're there and you fall off, there's kind of no going back until the parts start to change?
Well, I think it can be both, right? In the sense that I think it's dead, right? I don't think we all, especially me, if they have a great comeback win or they play well for a couple days, and it reminds me of something that happened in 23 or the beginning of 24, I kind of reference it in my head. But that's never coming back in the sense of the way that it happened, the way that it felt, the sort of like the vibe of that team. That's not coming back. But what can happen is it can look different. It can be different. They can still be a good team moving forward at some point, but it's not going to look or feel the same way. And here's why, right? Like the 24 team had Corbin Burns on it, and Anthony Santander hit 44 homers. They don't have either of those things right now. Gunnar Henderson put up a legitimate MVP caliber campaign. They don't have that either. Colton Cowser is now playing well, but he was a star player in 2024. In June 2024, Adley Rutschman was arguably the best young catcher in the history of the sport.
Yeah.
And he's been good this season, but he's been on the IL 4 times in the past 365 days. And so this team is far too different in its makeup, in where it needs to be good for there to be kind of a return of 23-24. But what it can be is you still see the parts there. You see the way that they played this weekend. They have enough to be – it looks like it's going to take like 84 wins. This team is certainly capable of winning 84 games. And if they don't do it, it will be a lot of people's faults. But it's not going to exactly look like it did in 23 or 24.
Jacob Calvin Meyer is with us here on GCR. You point out that they could get to that point. I am, and maybe I have made too much of this, but I think their clock is ticking a lot faster than the end of the season.
Oh, yeah.
I think the clock is really surrounding the deadline. Because I don't think this team is constituted. There is a ceiling where they can, even if they were to somehow sneak in, get the third wild card in a down American League, they're just not good enough on paper to me to be able to do anything with that. I mean, I get it. It's the playoffs and anything can happen. I understand we say those things all the time. But in a practical sense, I don't think that's possible. I'm not even suggesting that I think they're one move away from that, but I do think that the vibes can shift if you somehow win a boatload of games between now and August 3rd, and now it is worth being aggressive, and you are, really pursuing, I don't know, Joe Ryan, someone with maybe even a little bit of control. I think that you can completely change the vibes based on what happens there, but if you're even in the spot that you're in right now or regress at all from that point, I think you really have to ask some big questions about what you do. I don't even know the elegant way of saying it, right? But it feels like the next month is really almost like the most imperative month of this era of Orioles baseball to me, because you've got to figure out if there is still something here or not.
Yeah, no, I think you hit the nail on the head. And when I say, they have a chance to get to 84 wins or whatever, in my head, I'd say it's a 25% chance or a 20% chance.
Mm-hmm.
That's basically what Fangraphs gives them to make the playoffs. And those are not good odds, right? Nobody would take those odds right now. At the beginning of the season, if somebody had gone up to you and said, "Hey, there's a 25% chance they're gonna get the third wild card spot," you would have been like, "What?
This is gross.
What the heck went wrong?"
Right.
And if those are the odds a month from now or 6 weeks from now, I'm not sure how much Michael Elias is going to push his chips to the middle of the table. I will say one thing that I found quite refreshing about Pete Alonso's addition to the team and his leadership style is I really do recommend fans anytime that he talks to the media to kind of to really listen in, because frankly a lot of it is sort of like cliches and the typical player stuff, but then every once in a while he's quite honest, and he does not beat around the bush. He also talks quite loud in the clubhouse, which I find interesting, and guys are listening. And he said yesterday, we are kind of creeping up to the halfway point here, and for us, now's the time. This has to be the time.
Yeah.
Okay, we all know what Pete Alonso is talking about there, and he knows it. And so, yes, you are right. It's not even August 3rd. It's frankly, it might be the break, or maybe it's a week after the All-Star break. That is when teams are going to really decide what to do. And, I listened to, you had John Mioli on last week, which was fantastic as always. And he referenced something to the effect of like the odds of Elias buying in some form are quite high because of the state of the minors, and they have a lot of players
that they can't put on the roster.
Going to be right. So is it in theory possible that there could be, let's say they find themselves in a month in the same spot that they are now, where they're 3 games back, but they're 5 games under 500 or whatever. Could they do sort of a mix of buying and selling? Maybe. But that doesn't really feel like Elias to me. In 22, they had a chance, and I know things are a lot different now, but they sold it in 22 because he didn't really feel like they had a chance. This front office feels like an all-in type of front office to me, and they're gonna make a decision, and whatever they're gonna decide, they're gonna do. And so you're right. If they can play well enough over the next month, one of the things that could really change the trajectory of the season is if they go out and they get a stud starting pitcher and a great left-handed reliever, and then you look at it and go, okay, now they're really in this thing, and that can catapult them forward. But at the same time, even if they do those things, I'm not sure how much it means for October. I don't think anybody can point at this team and say that this is a team that can make a run in the playoffs, but it's not. Frankly, it's not really about that at this point, right? I don't want to sound like Jim Mora, but I think so. I don't know if it was on your show. I think it was. I think it was Chris Rose last week said something to the effect of like, would fans be okay if they like made the playoffs and then won the wild card series but lost in the ALDS? And I looked at that and was like, if that happens, this season is, I wouldn't say it's a success from what the expectations were coming in, but I would assume, yes, the fans would take that. If they can make the playoffs and win a game, a playoff series, with where we stand right now, that seems like sort of the best case scenario to me.
What you're reflecting is like something would have had to have gone right, like between now, and that I think is a big part of it. Like I don't think you can do that without either like Jackson Holiday coming to life and looking like the guy that the Orioles thought he was, or Gunnar just being a more complete version. Something has to have gone. Colton Cowser being more consistent. Anything that could go right. That it's, to your point, it's a little bit about winning the series, but it's more about sort of the trajectory of where this group is and the belief that they could still do it together. I think that would be what would be reflected by that type of run.
Yeah, it's this feels too like, I don't know, like ephemeral to really put like a pin in.
Yeah.
But what fans want is a team that they believe in. And the 2022 team was not very good, and they didn't make the playoffs. And that was very different then because they weren't even out of the rebuild yet. But fans believed in that team, whatever that team was. And it has been more than 2 years since fans it's been at least 2 years since fans kind of believed in this team and believed going into a game, going into a series, that they would win the game, that they would win the series. And that is sort of what they have an opportunity to change here if they can play a little bit better, if they can do some things at the deadline. And then maybe they go into September and then you kind of capture some of that back for the fan base. And then you go into October and see what happens. But that's a tall task given where they stand. Again, they're 5 games below. And at some point, the cream is going to rise to the top. We are not going to see an 81-win team make the playoffs. It's just I'm willing to be wrong about that. It's going to take 84, 85, 86 wins. And to get there, they need to play at a 90-win pace for the rest of the season. And we haven't seen them do that for a very, very long time.
That's the reality. Jacob Calvin Meyer with us here on GCR. I want to get your thoughts because you and I talked a little bit last week. I don't like being the guy that ends up I've been doing the heavy lifting on this, but I do think the Adley Rutschman conversation is relevant. And I think it's relevant in the context of what are you going to be as a franchise? Because, as I pointed, if you go out and get Joe Ryan at the deadline, then what are we talking about? But I keep coming back to, other than 1 year of Corbin Burns, the Orioles have not swung for the type of what they've swung. I don't want to be unfair. They have swung, but they have not landed the type of pitching that would be required to genuinely believe that you have a chance at winning a World Series. And my point, and the reason why I'm at least considering the conversation about Adley Rutschman is, if you don't intend to change that, And I get that it's complicated with a potential work stoppage, but if you don't intend to change that, then how are you selling me that you're trying or there's a genuine chance of winning a World Series next year? And if you're not, and Adley Rutschman's not signing, then don't you at least have to talk about it and consider that possibility? And I'm not, banging the drum or saying that it's what I want them to do or what I think they have to do, as much as it's I need them to tell me what really the plan is here, because if it's just to be a team that's in the mix to win a wild card, and if everything goes right, compete for the division, I don't know. That doesn't seem like that's a good argument for holding on to an asset instead of trying to recoup value for it.
Yeah. No, this is a really complicated and interesting topic. Before I talk, let's just have two assumptions moving forward. Let's just assume, one, that Adley's going to be back in 5 days from this concussion.
Sure, yes.
We have no idea how long this is going to take,
yep.
But let's just assume he's, all's good and he's going to be back in 6
and he
days
keeps performing well. He keeps
right.
Yeah.
Right. And then second, let's ignore the lockout. Let's just say that we know that they're going to start on time next season, just for the purposes of this. Okay, so there is, in my view, for this trade deadline, a virtually 0% chance that he's traded if the Orioles are still hoping to compete in this season or next season. If you trade him, it is another mini rebuild. And because I don't see, it would be frankly, like a tacit admission from Elias that stage one or plan A of this rebuild, which was all built on Adley Rutschman, that it failed. And you don't trade one of the best catchers in baseball, which is what he is.
Yep.
When he's healthy. You don't trade that if you're still trying to compete. And so now, is there in theory, if you're playing MLB The Show, can you trade Rutschman and get somebody, a starting pitcher back, like a really quality starting? Maybe, but that's not usually how these go. Like, you're going to get prospects back for Adley Rutschman. And so if you trade him, that means you're going to do a sort of a mini rebuild, that you're sort of admitting, like, hey, 27 might not be our year, and we're going to gear up for 28. And and I don't see why they would do that. Now, if they fall off the wagon here and they lose 10 straight and they're selling at the deadline, anything is possible, right? Like, anything is possible if they're selling at the deadline. And then you go into the off season, and if, let's say, they don't make the playoffs this year, they go into the off season, they have one more year of Adley Rutschman, and they're not able to extend him, then again, anything is on the table when it comes to that stuff. But I just go back to the point that if you trade him, you're admitting that you're not able to make the playoffs in that upcoming season. And so I found it quite illuminating last week when Jeff Passan came out with his trade
100.
deadline article. Yeah, and he listed 100 players who could be traded at the deadline, and he listed 5 Orioles players, and Adley Rutschman was not on the list. And there are people in the national baseball scene who love to, put all of us like we're hamsters on a wheel and spin us round and round, and the content machine is always going to win, and they're going to get their impressions, and that is okay. But there's a difference between, and this is coming from somebody who I'm not.
Yeah, you're not nobody's going to say you're a homer. Nobody's going to say that you're an apologist, anything along those lines.
Right. It's if Adley Rutschman is going to be traded, like, if Jeff Passan or Ken Rosenthal come out and say it, like, I'll believe it a lot more than some other people, if that makes sense.
I totally understand that.
And I'll say this too. I saw, I don't know who tweeted it, but it was one of the popular fan accounts who tweeted something like, if the Orioles offered Adley like 5 for 80 or 84 or something, like, it was like 5 for 84, would he take it right now or something like that? And I got to tell you, I think that number's way low. And I think it would take much more than that. Cal Raleigh got 6 for 110, and that covered, a few years of arbitration. And then a few years ago, JT Realmuto got 5 for 115, I think. Adley Rutschman's in that camp. And so there's two ways to look at it. It's like, one, like that's a lot of money for a catcher, and he's going to be 30. He's had 4 injuries in the past year. Are the Orioles going to be able to win a bidding war if he gets to free agency? If you're Adley at this point, why would you not go to free agency?
That's the
right?
issue.
You're like, why would you not go to free agency? And then you look at it and go, okay, the Yankees really need a catcher. I know Orioles fans aren't going to win, but the Yankees seem to really need a catcher. And there's going to be some team like the Angels or something who are going to get into a bidding war for Adley's services. So there's one way to look at it and go, like, can the Orioles win that? On the other hand, if you look at kind of this young core and the guys, like when they get to free agency, like even let's say Gunnar gets back on track, Gunnar's going to get paid 300, 400, 500 million.
In context.
That is that's a much different discussion than Adley, who is going to get paid 120 to 150 or something like that. And the Orioles can afford to pay Adley Rutschman. They can 100% afford it. And so I'm thinking it might be a little bit more likely that they're able to retain Adley, win that bidding war in free agency, in theory, if they get there. And so that's why, again, I think the trading him, while it's a really interesting discussion, and from an asset management standpoint, that makes sense. If John Angelos was still the owner of this team, the odds of selling Adley Rutschman at this deadline or in the offseason would be much higher, because asset management was the number one way that they viewed things. That's really not how things have operated. They paid $8.5 million for Gary Sanchez last offseason. Like, they're willing to throw away some money. So why not do it for a kind of cornerstone generational type catcher in Adley Rutschman?
Jacob, I agree with everything you just said. I just keep coming back to, but the one place they haven't is pitching. And that, to me, not taking anything away, because, my God, they've actually pitched pretty well of late. But the difference in me believing that they are a team that is capable of making a deep playoff run is, do you have those horses? And I just need to see them at some point show that commitment, that we understand that's what this requires. And maybe one day down the road, Joseph Zerwa is going to be that guy, but he's not going to be that guy next year, right? Like, and I just keep, until you do, it feels like you're in, you want to be competitive, but not really taking it seriously enough to the extent of winning a World Series.
Yeah, it's funny. Like, the 24 season is that sweep in 24 is probably so much more painful than the one in 23, because I think that's the only year where you could argue that they did build a pitching staffer, right? Like, if Bradish hadn't gotten hurt, which of course he's probably going to, because he had the PRP and all that stuff. But if Bradish hadn't gotten hurt, they certainly had a good enough rotation. But, they had Burns, they had Eflin. Those guys combined to give up, 2 runs in the playoffs.
Yep.
And Eflin was I think I saw something recently that there was kind of some revisionist history, like, criticism of the 24 deadline. And
he was the most effective starter acquired at the deadline.
Right. There was only one good starting pitcher who was traded at that deadline, and it was Zach Eflin. And he pitched amazing for this team. So it's important not to forget that. But you're right in the fact that this team cannot win in the playoffs with the rotation that they currently have right now. It is going to take reinforcements, and they need to get a guy who's a top of the rotation arm.
Yep.
They either need to have somebody turn into that, they need to develop somebody into that, or they need to go out and acquire one moving forward. But for me, that's a little bit of a different conversation than the Adley Rutschman one.
Yeah, I get it. Right. Yeah. Sign Adley Rutschman and then do that. Yeah. Yeah.
My dad's been an Orioles fan. My dad's 67. He's been an Orioles fan his whole life, and he'll call me sometimes when he sees something that angers him. They miss a cutoff man, or whatever. Cal Ripken's gonna fix.
You've been getting a lot of calls, haven't you? You've been getting
Cal Ripken's gonna fix all the fundamentals, but So but he'll call me angrily. And he goes he goes, a World Series team doesn't do that, and I go, Dad, what makes you think this is a World? This is not a World Series team. But so the thing with this is, and the Adley Rutschman discussion is two different things, because it's like, okay, if you if you're playing OOTP, which is like a baseball manager simulation game, and you're at the deadline and you just say, okay, I don't think this team can win a World Series in the next 2 years. Therefore, logically, I should trade Adley Rutschman. Like, yes, that is sound process if we were on the New York Stock Exchange and these were stocks. But that's not exactly what this is.
Yeah, there's
and
more.
I know it's not just – I understand fans don't want to hear this. This isn't just about winning a World Series. This is you are a civic institution of a way.
Entity,
you are an organization.
Mm-hmm.
You're supposed to go out and try to win games, and being a good team is better than not being a good team. And even if you're just a good team and you make the playoffs and you win a series or you win a game, that is a worthwhile pursuit. And sometimes you might get to a World Series like the Diamondbacks a few years ago or luck into one. Or maybe you'll have a team that's good enough, and then you do go in and buy. But I don't think it should be a situation, because then at that point, listen, what are the odds that the Orioles win a World Series in one of the next 3 seasons? The odds of that are probably below 5 or 6%.
They're still low.
So then they should just trade Gunnar Henderson at that point, right? And of course that's not the case. So it's difficult to have this discussion, because it's like, yeah, they're not a World Series team right now, but that doesn't mean that they should sort of just give up on trying to at least be a good team. Before you can be a great team, you need to be a good team.
Jacob Calvin Meyer, I enjoy our conversations. I really do. And I appreciate the thought that you put into it. At J. Calvin Meyer, of course, is how you follow him in the Baltimore Sun, baltimoresun.com. I'm going to be out of the country for a bit, but when I get back, let's do this again as we get closer to the deadline. I appreciate you, brother. Thanks for hopping on, man.
Out of the country for a bit. Where are you going?
I'm headed to Tanzania, of all places. We're better to celebrate our nation's 250th birthday than my mother-in-law had a bucket list thing. She wanted to take my kids on a African safari, so I'm spending 2 weeks on a safari in Africa, brother. It's gonna be a wild time.
2 weeks in 2 weeks in Tanzania with the in-laws?
Yeah, well, it's just my mother-in-law. It's the 4 of us and my mother-in-law. That's who it is.
Okay.
And I get along. Everything will be fine. My kids are the far bigger problem, because they're going to be on a plane for 14 hours. I got a 9-year-old and an 11-year-old on 2 separate 7-hour flights. It's going to be a mess. It's just going to be a disaster.
Godspeed. Well, there's one good thing about going to Tanzania for 2 weeks. The Orioles cannot hurt you in Tanzania.
I don't have to think about it. I don't have to think about it at all, which is kind of nice. Appreciate you, brother.
Well, listen, if they play really well in these 2 weeks,
I might have to stay. Yeah, I might have to stay.
You got to stay. Yeah, let's start a GoFundMe to keep Glenn in Tanzania.
God. All right, buddy. I'll talk to you. Thank you, dude.
Yep. Thanks. See ya.
Jacob Calvin Meyer with us.